Returning home from a long business trip, I found my entire life scattered across my front lawn. My daughter walked out, looked at the cam, and casually ordered me to clean up this trash. She needed my bedroom for her yoga. Even my mother's irreplaceable china was broken. I simply stared at her, then down at my shattered memories. Something inside me changed that day. Like, share, and let us know where you are listening from, so I can see how far my story has reached. The humid air of late summer clung to Eleanor as she stepped out of the airport shuttle, a weary sigh escaping her lips. 2 weeks of grueling negotiations in Tokyo had left her exhausted, but the thought of her own bed, a quiet cup of tea, and the familiar comfort of her home had propelled her through the last leg of her journey. She gripped the handle of her carry-on, her briefcase slung over her shoulder, and walked towards her house, a sense of relief washing over her. The automatic garage door hummed to life, but as it slowly rose, Eleanor froze. Her relief curdled into a cold, sickening dread. Her front yard, usually a neat expanse of green, was a landscape of chaos. Boxes, furniture, and personal items were strewn across the lawn, haphazardly piled, some spilling their contents onto the damp grass. Her mahogany dresser lay on its side, a drawer ripped open, exposing delicate linens to the elements. A towering stack of books had toppled, their pages fluttering like startled birds. And worst of all, shimmering shards of porcelain caught the sunlight, glinting among the debris, the remnants of her grandmother's cherished china set. "Finally, you're back." The voice, bright and entirely devoid of concern, cut through the oppressive silence of Eleanor's shock. Her daughter Cassandra emerged from the front door, phone already pressed to her ear, a casual disdain in her posture. She surveyed the wreckage for a moment, not with alarm but with an impatient purse of her perfectly glossed lips. She lowered her phone just enough to deliver her next line, her gaze barely meeting Eleanor's stunned eyes. "Now clean up this trash. I need that room cleared out by noon." Eleanor felt the breath hitch in her throat, a cold hand squeezing her heart. Her legs felt like jelly, rooted to the spot. "Cassie," she whispered, the name a raw plea. Her voice was thin, reedy, barely audible above the chirping of crickets and the distant drone of traffic. "What is this? What happened to my things?" Her gaze swept from the broken china to a framed photograph of her and Cassandra at the beach, now lying face down in the dirt, the glass shattered. Cassandra rolled her eyes, a gesture so dismissive it felt like a slap. She pushed a stray strand of perfectly highlighted hair behind her ear, her expression one of utter boredom. "Oh, Mom, I told you last week. I'm converting your bedroom into my new meditation and yoga space. It's just so much brighter in there, and the energy flow is all wrong in the spare room." She picked at an invisible lint particle on her pristine white leggings. Eleanor's mind raced, a frantic search through the last 7 days. A business trip, endless meetings, snatched phone calls. Had she missed something? Had she simply been too tired, too preoccupied? She remembered calls about project deadlines, about flight changes, but nothing, absolutely nothing, about her bedroom being repurposed. She knew with a chilling certainty that this conversation had never taken place. "No, Cassie, you didn't," Eleanor began, her voice gaining a sliver of strength, a desperate need to assert reality. "You never said anything about this." Cassandra scoffed, her eyes darting back to her phone screen. "Mom, honestly, your memory's getting worse by the day. We talked about it. Don't you remember? It's fine, really. The guest room is perfectly fine for you. Besides," she added, her tone laced with a passive-aggressive edge, "you're hardly ever here anyway with all your little work trips." Eleanor's chest tightened. Those little work trips paid the mortgage, funded Cassandra's expensive yoga classes, and kept the household running. She gestured weakly to the chaotic scene, her hand trembling slightly. "But my china, Cassie, my mother's china, and my photo albums, they're exposed. What about all these things?" Cassandra glanced up from her phone, her eyes flicking across the yard with a practiced indifference. "Look, Mom, Chloe and Brooke are coming for yoga in an hour, and I need this mess cleaned up before they get here. It's all just junk anyway. You have too much stuff." She waved a hand vaguely at the entirety of Eleanor's life laid bare on the lawn. "Where am I supposed to sleep tonight?" Eleanor asked, a cold dread seeping into her bones. She felt a profound sense of displacement, an utter loss of agency in her own home. Cassandra finally looked at her directly, a hard, unyielding glint in her eyes. The guest room, obviously. It's just a room change. You'll survive. Her tone was flat, devoid of any genuine emotion, as if she were discussing a minor inconvenience rather than a complete uprooting of her mother's existence. And anything that doesn't fit in the guest room by tonight will be donated or thrown away. I need the space clear. With that pronouncement, Cassandra spun on her heel. I have an important call, then yoga, then lunch with Leo, she rattled off, her voice already fading as she re-entered the house, leaving Eleanor standing alone amidst the wreckage of her life. She was dismissed, a mere obstacle in Cassandra's perfectly planned day, like hired help whose contract had just expired. Eleanor stood motionless in her driveway, the evening sun casting long, accusatory shadows. She felt the prickle of eyes from across the street. Mrs. Henderson was watering her begonias, her movements slow, her gaze lingering a moment too long. The humiliation burned, a hot, searing shame that threatened to consume her. Her eyes fell upon a leather-bound photo album, lying half open in a puddle of muddy water. It was an old album, filled with faded snapshots of Cassandra as a child, her first steps, her toothless grin, her kindergarten graduation. Eleanor bent down slowly, her fingers brushing the damp, warped pages. The cover, once smooth, was now scuffed and torn. A cold resolve, sharp and unyielding, began to settle deep within her. It was a feeling she hadn't known in a long time. Not since her husband had passed, and she'd taken on the mantle of protector and provider for Cassandra. A single, clear thought echoed in the suddenly silent space of her mind, cutting through the pain and the humiliation. Enough. The guest room, once a sanctuary of quiet comfort for visiting relatives, now felt like a sterile prison. Eleanor sat on the edge of the unfamiliar bed, the only light coming from a small bedside lamp. Her life, meticulously curated over decades, had been unceremoniously shoved into 3 mismatched cardboard boxes, stacked precariously in the corner. The air still carried the faint scent of the cheap air freshener Cassandra used to mask the smell of her incense. Eleanor closed her eyes, trying to block out the sterile beige walls and the lingering irritation that seemed to cling to everything in this room. Slowly, she reached for the smallest box, her fingers brushing against the worn velvet of her mother's jewelry box. It was one of the few items Cassandra hadn't discarded or damaged. Opening it, Eleanor found not just the tarnished silver locket and the strand of pearls, but a flood of memories. These weren't memories of the humiliating afternoon, but older, darker ones, the ones that had shaped her, shaped Cassandra, and ultimately led them to this wretched night. She remembered the piercing wail of the ambulance siren, the frantic paramedics, the ashen face of the doctor. Arthur, her beloved husband, Cassandra's doting father, gone in an instant. A sudden, brutal heart attack had claimed him when Cassandra was a vibrant, curious 7-year-old, her pigtail bouncing as she chased butterflies in the yard. One moment they were a complete family. The next, Eleanor was a widow, adrift in a sea of grief, clutching a little girl whose world had just imploded. The financial reality had hit with a cruel swiftness. Arthur's life insurance, which they had optimistically believed would provide a safety net, barely covered the funeral expenses in the last few months of bills. After everything was settled, Eleanor was left with a sprawling mortgage, a 7-year-old daughter who deserved the world, and a paltry $1,743 in her bank account. A chill ran down her spine even now, recalling that terrifying vulnerability. "No, baby," she had whispered, holding a tearful Cassandra close, stroking her soft hair. "We're staying right here. Mommy's going to take care of everything." It was a promise born of fierce love and desperate fear, a vow she had intended to keep at any cost. She looked at her daughter's tear-stained face, her little nose pressed into Eleanor's shoulder, and Eleanor swore she would give Cassandra everything she had, everything Arthur would have given her and more. The college savings account Arthur had meticulously set up for Cassandra, a dream of Ivy League universities, evaporated quickly, a casualty of immediate necessities. Eleanor, who had once prided herself on being a meticulous homemaker and a supportive partner, found herself thrust into the unforgiving world of financial survival. Her daytime job as an administrative assistant, while steady, offered little more than a subsistence wage. So, she took a second job, cleaning offices after hours, the scent of industrial cleaner clinging to her clothes as she scrubbed floors and emptied trash cans until the early hours of the morning. Then, and on weekends, she added a third, hunched over a keyboard, her eyes blurring with fatigue as she performed data entry for a small accounting firm. Every penny was counted, every expenditure scrutinized. She sold her reliable, if somewhat dated, sedan, opting for public transport and endless walking. Instead of buying new clothes, she frequented thrift stores, carefully selecting items that could be altered or mended. She even learned to cut Cassandra's hair herself, watching YouTube tutorials late at night, her hands clumsy but determined. But through it all, she guarded Cassandra fiercely from their struggles. She never wanted her daughter to see the worry lines etched around her eyes, the calluses on her hands, or the weight of the world on her shoulders. She wanted Cassandra's childhood to be as normal, as carefree, as filled with simple joys as possible. Looking back, Eleanor wondered if that had been her first, most fundamental mistake. In shielding Cassandra from the harsh realities of their life, she had inadvertently cultivated a dangerous ignorance. By the time Cassandra reached high school, Eleanor had become an expert at the delicate art of financial sleight of hand. She'd worked double shifts and sacrificed her own meager comfort to ensure Cassandra had the latest cheerleading uniform, the best textbooks, and the perfect dress for homecoming. She remembered one particularly lean month, eating peanut butter sandwiches for dinner. For 2 weeks straight so Cassandra could have the designer gown she desperately wanted for prom. Cassandra, bless her naive heart, never questioned where the money came from. It was simply there, as if by magic, an endless wellspring flowing just for her. It was then, in those quiet, exhausted moments, that Eleanor began to realize what she was inadvertently doing. She was raising a daughter who, through no fault of her own, had come to believe that her needs, her desires, were the undeniable center of the universe. The world, and more specifically her mother, existed to fulfill them. This pattern, once established, proved remarkably difficult to break. It continued through college. Eleanor, despite her growing fatigue and the increasing demands of her primary job, took out a second mortgage on the house to fund Cassandra's enrollment in an expensive private university. When Cassandra, after 2 years, declared she was changing her major from pre-med to art history and the philosophy of wellness, Eleanor swallowed her anxieties and offered no argument. Her daughter's happiness, she reasoned, was paramount. Then 3 years ago, Cassandra moved back home temporarily after graduating with a degree she had, predictably, never used. The temporary arrangement had stretched into permanence, morphing into a comfortable existence where Cassandra pursued passion projects, went to yoga retreats, and planned lunches with friends like Leo, while Eleanor continued to shoulder the financial burden. Now, sitting in the cold guest room, the small jewelry box clutched in her hand, Eleanor reached for a worn leather-bound notebook from one of her boxes. It was her meticulously kept expense ledger, a habit born of necessity. Her fingers traced the columns of figures, adding up the past 3 years: yoga classes, organic groceries, designer athleisure wear, spa treatments, concert tickets. A staggering, undeniable total emerged on the page: over $47,000. $47,000 spent solely on supporting Cassandra's lavish, self-indulgent lifestyle, beyond her share of utilities or basic food, in the last 3 years alone. And Cassandra hadn't contributed a single dime. The $47,000 figure seared itself into Eleanor's mind, a damning indictment of her own choices. It wasn't just the money, though. That was a considerable sum. It was the emotional toll. She had become Cassandra's ATM, a convenient resource to be tapped, a silent presence to be ignored unless a financial need arose. Her opinions, her feelings, her very existence seemed to diminish in Cassandra's eyes the moment she stopped being a facilitator. Cassandra's casual cruelty and breathtaking entitlement this morning, the flippant dismissal of her mother's life, were not isolated incidents. They were the culmination of years of Eleanor's enabling, of her sacrifices masked as love, of her silence mistaken for consent. As if on cue, her phone, lying beside the open jewelry box, buzzed with an incoming text message. It was from Cassandra. Eleanor picked it up, her fingers tightening around the cool metal of the phone. The message read, "Hey, Need you to pick up some almond milk and that expensive granola I like from the health food store on your way home tomorrow. Also, Leo is taking me shopping tomorrow, so I'll need the credit card. Thanks. Eleanor stared at the words, each one a tiny barb, twisting in the wound Cassandra had inflicted earlier. On your way home tomorrow. As if Eleanor still had a home, as if she hadn't just been exiled from her own bedroom. Need the credit card. Not, may I please use the credit card? Or can we discuss a budget? Just a bald expectation. A command, a strange quiet settled over Eleanor. She looked at the message, then back at the worn velvet jewelry box, and then at the 3 sad boxes of her life crammed into the guest room. For the first time in she couldn't remember how long, she didn't feel a flicker of obligation. No immediate impulse to respond or accommodate. Instead, a cold, steady resolve began to solidify within her. She scrolled down, navigated to the delete option, and with a deliberate press of her thumb erased the message. Not just from her inbox, but from her immediate concern. It was a small act, but for Eleanor it felt monumental, a tiny tremor before an earthquake. She realized with a clarity that was both painful and liberating that she had become a stranger in her own life. In her relentless pursuit of Cassandra's happiness, in her desperate efforts to make up for Arthur's absence, she had utterly forgotten to take care of herself. Her dreams, her hobbies, her peace of mind, all had been subsumed by the relentless demands of a daughter who saw her as little more than a utility. But there was something Cassandra didn't know about her mother, something hidden, meticulously guarded for 28 long years. It was a secret born of the crushing fear of destitution, forged in the crucible of early widowhood, and meticulously nurtured in the shadows of her exhausting life. Eleanor reached into the jewelry box once more, her fingers delving beneath the tangled necklaces and forgotten earrings. Her touch found it, a small, intricate key, cold and metallic, barely an inch long. She hadn't touched it in over a decade, but its presence was a constant, comforting thrum beneath the surface of her chaotic life. It was the key to a safety deposit box nestled deep within the vault of a bank across town. A box containing not just dusty documents, but a carefully constructed, completely separate financial universe. Investments, savings, a financial safety net built in secret, brick by painstaking brick, ever since Cassandra was 8 years old. The decision to start this secret fund had come to her gradually, in the sleepless nights after Arthur's death, when the stark reality of being solely responsible for another human being pressed down on her with suffocating weight. She had loved Arthur deeply, but his sudden death had taught her a brutal lesson. Security, true security, came not from a partner, but from self-reliance. And another, perhaps even harder lesson, that even the people you love most, the ones you would lay down your life for, could unwittingly or even purposefully take advantage of you if you let them. She had promised Cassandra everything, but she had also quietly promised herself that she would never again be caught completely unmoored. Her phone buzzed again, yanking her back to the present. Another text from Cassandra. Oh, also it read, Chloe invited me to go to that new spa resort next weekend. It's supposed to be divine. Can you cover it? It's only like 500 or something. Eleanor looked at the text, the casual assumption, the casual demand for another $500. Her gaze drifted from the screen to the small key in her palm, cold and heavy. $500 for a spa weekend. $500 that she had scrimped and saved, working until her bones ached for decades. A slow smile spread across Eleanor's face. It wasn't a happy smile, not yet. It was something deeper, something colder. It was the smile of someone who had just remembered she had options, remembered a strength she had buried under layers of self-sacrifice. Cassandra thought she was dealing with a pushover, an old woman too dependent and too tired to fight back. She had no idea that the woman she'd just humiliated in the front yard had been planning for this day for longer than she'd been alive. The next morning, a pale but resolute Eleanor drove to the First National Bank. The small, ornate key clutched so tightly in her hand that its edges bit into her palm. The sun was barely up, painting the sky in soft hues of rose and gold, but Eleanor felt no warmth. Her mind was a whirlwind of questions, suspicions, and a dawning, terrifying clarity. She hadn't visited the safety deposit box in 3 years, not since the last time she'd updated her will, quietly adding a clause about the future grandchildren she dreamed of, a clause Cassandra knew nothing about. The bank manager, a polite young man named Mr. Harrison, recognized her immediately and ushered her to the vault with a deferential nod. Her hands trembled slightly as she inserted the key, the metallic click echoing loudly in the hushed, sterile environment. With a soft hiss, the long, narrow box slid out. It was heavy, packed full, a physical manifestation of nearly 3 decades of quiet, painstaking effort. These documents, carefully collected and preserved, held the true story of her life, a narrative entirely separate from the one Cassandra knew. She carried the box to a private viewing room, her heart thumping, a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Spreading the contents across the polished mahogany table, Eleanor felt a strange detachment, as if she were examining someone else's life. Stock certificates, neatly bundled, spoke of careful investments in diverse portfolios, bond portfolios, a testament to conservative but consistent growth. Deeds to 3 rental properties, purchased over the years, steadily generating income. And bank statements from secret accounts, showing balances that stretch far beyond what Cassandra could ever have imagined. The numbers were staggering. A quick mental calculation, confirming her last review, confirmed a total of $1.7 million in various investments in liquid assets, completely separate from the house in her primary checking account. Beyond that, the 3 rental properties represented substantial equity, and a fully funded trust for future grandchildren lay dormant, waiting for a generation Cassandra hadn't even considered. But then, her hand brushed against a thin manila folder tucked at the very bottom of the box, obscured by the other, more comforting papers. It wasn't a document she remembered placing there. Her blood ran cold as she pulled it out. Power of attorney, dated 2 years ago, the very year she had undergone minor gallbladder surgery, a procedure Cassandra had insisted she needed, someone to handle things just in case. Eleanor remembered it now, a blur of pre-op anxiety and Cassandra's insistent, reassuring voice. She had signed it, trusting her daughter implicitly, skimming the legalese, more focused on the impending surgery than on legal documents. As she read the contents of the POA now, the words swam before her eyes, coalescing into a horrifying picture. The document was extensive, far beyond what was necessary for a minor surgical procedure. It gave Cassandra broad access to her primary checking account, the power to make medical decisions on her behalf, and chillingly, full authority over her financial affairs in the event of mental incapacity. Mental incapacity. The words hit Eleanor like a physical blow, knocking the air from her lungs. She remembered Cassandra's dismissive comment yesterday. "Mom, your memory is getting worse by the day." It wasn't a casual observation. It was a calculated seed planted to justify this. A wave of nausea washed over her. Beneath the power of attorney papers, a series of bank statements from her primary checking account caught her eye. Statements she typically reviewed online, but had been too busy, too trusting, to scrutinize lately. Unauthorized withdrawals, large, round figures, 12,000 here, 15,000 there. A brazen 23,000 vanished over the last 18 months, siphoned off in smaller, less conspicuous amounts, carefully timed to blend with the monthly expenses. This wasn't just Cassandra dipping into her funds. This was a sustained, calculated campaign of theft. And then, tucked almost casually behind the bank statements, was a folded piece of paper, a printed email. Her heart pounded, a frantic drum in her ears. The sender was Cassandra, the recipient, Leo. Eleanor's eyes scanned the words, each one a hammer blow to her already fragile composure. "The old lady is getting more suspicious lately," the email began. "She's been asking more questions about money. Might need to move up our timeline. The house alone is worth at least $400,000. Easily. We could net a solid $350 after fees. She's not as sharp as she used to be. Said her memory was going yesterday. Totally forgot we talked about the yoga room. Shouldn't be hard to prove she can't manage her own affairs anymore." Eleanor's vision blurred. This wasn't just stealing. This was monstrous. Cassandra wasn't just taking her money. She was actively planning to have her declared mentally incompetent, using her own mother's supposed forgetfulness as a weapon. The casual dismissal of her memory, the subtle digs, the insistence on the yoga room, it was all part of a larger, more sinister plan. She continued to read, her breath catching in her throat, a cold, hard knot forming in her stomach. Once we get guardianship, the email concluded, we can sell the house and put her in one of those assisted living places. Somewhere cheap, obviously. Split everything 50-50, and we'll have enough to finally make our move. This time next year, we'll be living in Costa Rica like we planned. No more dealing with her. Freedom. The words echoed in the silent room, a symphony of betrayal. Put her in one of those assisted living places. No more dealing with her. Freedom. Eleanor felt as if she had been punched in the gut, winded, unable to breathe. Cassandra, her own daughter, the child she had sacrificed everything for, saw her as nothing more than an obstacle. An old lady to be removed, disposed of, and plundered for her assets. The crushing weight of humiliation and grief was suddenly eclipsed by a searing, white-hot rage. The previous parts of this story have shown you just how far a daughter can fall and a mother can rise. If you're gripped by Eleanor's journey, please remember to hit that like button, share this story with a friend, and subscribe so you don't miss a single part of this unfolding drama. Let's find out what Eleanor does next. Eleanor was still reeling from the contents of Cassandra's email when her phone buzzed again. Another text message from her daughter. The screen displayed a hurried, demanding tone. Where are you? Need you to sign some papers? The lawyer sent over something about updating your insurance beneficiaries. Leo says it's really important to get this done ASAP. Eleanor stared at the message, a cold knot tightening in her stomach. Updating her insurance beneficiaries. Her life insurance policy, a modest $500,000, had Cassandra listed as the sole beneficiary. It was a measure of protection, a final act of maternal care. What, Eleanor wondered, could Cassandra possibly want to update? Was she planning to increase the payout, perhaps even change the policy without Eleanor's full understanding? Or was this a more insidious plot to somehow benefit from her impending incapacity? The trusting woman she once was, the mother who had always seen the best in her daughter, was gone. In her place was a woman consumed by a cold, calculating fury, sharp and precise. She methodically gathered the evidence. The power of attorney, the damning bank statements, Cassandra's email to Leo. She carefully placed them into a new pristine manila folder, labeling it with a single stark word, Betrayal, evidence. The rest of the documents, the true wealth she had amassed in secret, remained in the safety deposit box, a future untouched, unseen. When Eleanor returned home, Cassandra's car was gone from the driveway. A small, hastily scrawled note was tacked to the front door, written in Cassandra's familiar, looping script. Mom, sorry, ran out to meet Leo. Insurance papers on your desk. Sign them, okay? Urgent. Be back soon. Eleanor walked into the house, her home feeling more like a stage set for a betrayal. Her desk, usually meticulously organized, now had a stack of papers from an unfamiliar insurance company. They were complex, filled with confusing jargon, requesting signatures to consolidate existing policies and streamline beneficiary disbursements. It looked legitimate enough to someone who wasn't paying close attention, someone who trusted implicitly. But Eleanor, the woman who had spent decades meticulously managing every penny, now had a mind sharper than any lawyer's fine print. She didn't sign a single page. Instead, she picked up her phone and dialed her longtime insurance agent, Mr. Davies. Eleanor, so glad you called. Been meaning to touch base, he chirped, his voice friendly and familiar. Mr. Davies, Eleanor cut him off, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Did you send me any papers regarding my life insurance policy or consolidating any of my existing policies today? There was a beat of silence on the other end. No, Eleanor, I certainly did not. Nothing from my office. And we'd never just send papers for consolidation without a thorough consultation first. Why do you ask? Eleanor explained, her voice growing colder with each word, describing the documents on her desk. Mr. Davies' tone shifted from cheerful to concerned. Eleanor, do not sign a thing. This sounds like some kind of scam. Potentially a very serious one. Who are these papers from? What company? Over the next 2 grueling hours, Eleanor was on the phone. First, with her primary bank, instructing them to freeze her main checking account and immediately revoke the power of attorney she had so carelessly granted Cassandra. The bank manager, once he understood the gravity of the situation, assured her it would be handled with utmost urgency. Then, with her financial advisor, outlining the full scope of Cassandra's actions and the email. Finally, she spoke with her attorney, Sarah Hayes, a sharp, no-nonsense woman who had handled Eleanor's legal affairs for years. Sarah listened patiently, taking detailed notes, her voice calm but firm. Eleanor, what you're describing is not just theft, it's financial elder abuse and attempted fraud. This is serious and, frankly, quite chilling. As Eleanor recounted the unfolding deception, the full horror of Cassandra's intentions crystallized. The attempts to consolidate policies, the subtle hints about her memory, the power of attorney, the outright theft, and the email outlining her fate. She wasn't just planning to rob me, Sarah, Eleanor finally said, her voice barely a whisper, thick with a terrible realization. She was planning to profit from my death. She wanted me gone, either through incapacity or something worse. The unspoken fear hung heavy in the air. Eleanor hung up, her head throbbing. She looked around the living room, once a place of warmth and family, now a battleground. She had spent 28 years protecting Cassandra, shielding her from hardship, giving her every advantage. But in her relentless pursuit of providing, she had forgotten a crucial, fundamental task. She had forgotten to teach her daughter how to be a good person, how to value integrity, kindness, and hard work over selfish gain. She had, in fact, created the very monster now trying to devour her. But Cassandra had made a critical miscalculation. She had overlooked her mother's intelligence, honed by years of navigating complex corporate structures and intricate financial landscapes. She had underestimated the steely strategy that lay beneath Eleanor's gentle demeanor. Most importantly, she had no idea of the ruthless streak that a mother, pushed to the absolute breaking point, could unearth to protect herself. The front door slammed shut, jarring Eleanor from her thoughts. Cassandra's cheerful voice rang out from the foyer, entirely unaware of the storm that had just gathered. "Mom, did you sign those papers? Leo's waiting in the car. We're going to be late for lunch with Chloe." Eleanor took a deep breath, the folder of evidence tucked firmly under her arm. Her spine straightened. Her resolve, forged in the fires of grief and betrayal, was now cold steel. She walked towards the living room where Cassandra would soon appear, her entitled smile plastered on her face. It was time, Eleanor knew, to teach her daughter the most important lesson of her life. Eleanor walked into the living room, the weight of the evidence folder a heavy, cold reassurance in her hand. The scene that greeted her was precisely what she expected. Cassandra sprawled on the pristine white couch, surrounded by a riot of expensive shopping bags from high-end boutiques. Her daughter was in her element, pulling out silk scarves and designer handbags, an ecstatic grin plastered across her face, completely oblivious to the storm brewing around her. Leo's car, a sleek black sedan, was visible through the window, parked impatiently at the curb. "There you are," Cassandra chirped, without even bothering to look up. Her fingers were deftly untying a ribbon from a delicate box. "Did you sign those insurance papers?" "Leo's waiting outside, and we're supposed to meet his lawyer in an hour about something important. We can't be late." His lawyer. "Not our lawyer," Eleanor noted, a fresh wave of disgust washing over her. The casual dismissal of her agency, the assumption of her compliance was infuriating. Eleanor remained standing, the folder held loosely by her side. "I didn't sign them, Cassandra," she stated, her voice calm, utterly devoid of the usual tremor of appeasement. "I have some questions about those documents." Cassandra froze, her hands still wrapped around a gleaming new handbag. Her head snapped up, and the joyous expression on her face instantly dissolved, replaced by a flash of impatience, quickly followed by a flicker of something else. Fear. Her eyes darted from Eleanor to the unsigned papers on the desk. "Questions? What kind of questions, Mom? Leo explained everything. It's just routine updating stuff. You're making a big deal out of nothing." Eleanor met her daughter's gaze, her own eyes unwavering. "When did Leo become an expert on my insurance policies, Cassandra?" she asked, her tone even, almost conversational, yet laced with an undeniable edge. Cassandra's defensiveness immediately kicked in. He works in finance, Mom. He knows about this stuff. He's just trying to help us. To help you. She clutched the handbag tighter, her knuckles white. He works in finance indeed, Eleanor murmured, a ghost of a smile playing on her lips, a smile utterly devoid of humor. Tell me, Cassandra, in all these months of Leo helping with my finances, did you two discuss anything else? My property values, perhaps? My other investments? Anything hidden away that I might not have mentioned? Cassandra's eyes widened, her entire body tensing. The designer shopping was completely forgotten. Her casual demeanor evaporated, replaced by a growing unease. Mom, what are you getting at? She stammered, her voice suddenly high-pitched. You're being really weird. What's wrong with you? Eleanor didn't answer directly. Instead, she took a deliberate step forward, her hand moving to the folder tucked under her arm. With a quiet, rustling sound, she opened it, revealing the neatly stacked documents within. What I'm getting at, Cassandra, is the fact that I went to the bank today. Specifically, I went to First National Bank, and I accessed my safety deposit box for the first time in 3 years. It was a very educational experience. The color drained from Cassandra's face, leaving her complexion ashen. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. She seemed to deflate, sinking onto the plush cushions of the couch, her gaze fixed on the folder with a raw, undeniable terror. Eleanor slowly pulled out the stack of bank statements, each one a stark record of betrayal. She held them up, not angrily, but with a chilling calm. These are the statements from my primary checking account, Cassandra. Money that's been mysteriously leaving my accounts in small, consistent amounts over the past 18 months. Money I never authorized. Money you took, using the power of attorney you convinced me to sign while I was recovering from surgery. Her voice remained level, almost dispassionate, making the accusation even more potent. 23,000, Cassandra. That's how much you've stolen from me. At the word stolen, Cassandra's carefully constructed composure shattered. Her eyes welled up, and a theatrical sob escaped her lips. Mom, no, it wasn't stealing. I was just borrowing it. Leo said it was fine, that you wouldn't even notice. I was going to pay you back. I swear, you just don't understand how hard it is out there. The tears flowed freely now, her face contorting into a mask of feigned distress. It was a performance Eleanor had seen countless times. But this time, Eleanor wasn't buying it. She reached back into the folder, her gaze never leaving Cassandra's tear-streaked face. Borrowing requires permission, Cassandra, Eleanor stated, her voice like ice. Taking money without permission is called theft, and attempting to hide it from the person you're taking it from is called deception. She paused, letting her words sink in, watching as Cassandra's sobs faltered. But theft, as grievous as it is actually the least of your crimes, isn't it? With a swift, decisive movement, Eleanor pulled out the printed email, the damning evidence of Cassandra's true intentions. She held it up, displaying the sender, the recipient, the subject line, and the chilling words within. Cassandra's eyes, still wet with crocodile tears, fell upon the printout. The fabricated sorrow vanished instantly, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated terror. Her breath hitched, and her face went utterly slack, every trace of artifice stripped away. She stared at the email, then at Eleanor, true fear unmistakable in her gaze. The game, she finally realized, was over. Cassandra stared at the printed email in Eleanor's hand, her face a mask of horror. Where did you get that? She demanded, her voice a strangled whisper, all pretense of innocence and tears utterly gone. Eleanor remained calm, her gaze unwavering. Does it matter, Cassandra? What matters is that I have it, along with several others from the same account. And I assure you my lawyer will be very interested in them. Cassandra scrambled for an explanation, her eyes darting wildly. That's not what it looks like, Mom. Leo was just... Eleanor cut her off, her voice still level, almost detached, as she finished her daughter's sentence with chilling precision. Leo was just planning to have me declared mentally incompetent so you could steal my house, plunder my secret accounts, and put me in a nursing home while you moved to Costa Rica with my money. Yes, Cassandra, I read the whole conversation. Every last word of your little escape plan. A profound silence descended upon the living room, broken only by the distant chirping of birds and the faint rumble of Leo's idling car outside. Cassandra's face cycled through a terrifying spectrum of emotions. Raw denial, a flicker of pure hatred, a quick, desperate calculation, and then finally a chilling cold acceptance. The mask, the carefully crafted persona of the sweet, slightly ditzy daughter, was completely and irrevocably off. What remained was something far more sinister, a core of cold, calculating self-interest. "So what?" Cassandra said, her voice flat, devoid of any remorse or even a hint of fear. Her shoulders lifted in a shrug of shocking indifference. "You're 65 years old, Mom. You're not getting any younger. You're hardly ever here working all the time. At least this way you'd be taken care of in a nice facility instead of deteriorating alone in this big house." Eleanor felt a fresh wave of shock, a chilling aghastness at the casual cruelty. "Taken care of with whose money, Cassandra?" she retorted, her voice rising slightly, betraying the crack in her composure. "After you've stolen everything I've worked for, everything I've sacrificed for you." Cassandra shrugged again, a dismissive gesture that ignited a spark of pure fury in Eleanor. "You can't take it with you when you die, can you? At least this way it would go to someone who could actually enjoy it. Someone like Leo. Leo and I have plans, Mom, big plans." Her voice gained a disturbing confidence, a sense of righteous entitlement. "We deserve better than this suburban mediocrity. We deserve to live a life of freedom, to experience the world." Eleanor stared at her, genuinely perplexed. "And what exactly have you done, Cassandra?" she asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "To deserve my life savings? To deserve the fruits of my decades of hard labor? My sacrifice? My sleepless nights?" Cassandra's eyes flashed with a sudden, vicious anger. "What have I done? I've put up with you for 35 years, always working, always tired, always worried about money, never any fun, always sacrificing for some vague future. You were never really here, Mom. You were always just a provider." Her voice grew louder, laced with a bitter resentment Eleanor had never imagined. "I worked 3 jobs, Cassandra," Eleanor said, genuinely stunned by her daughter's twisted perception. "I worked 3 jobs to keep a roof over our heads, to put food on the table, to give you everything you ever wanted. I sacrificed everything to ensure you had a better life than I did after your father died." Cassandra rolled her eyes, a gesture of profound impatience. "Sacrificed, sacrificed, sacrificed," she mimicked, a sneer on her lips. "That's all you ever talk about. Maybe I would have preferred a mother who was actually present, who wasn't so obsessed with money and making up for Dad's death." Eleanor took a deep, shuddering breath, a sudden crushing wave of grief for the wasted years washing over her. She knew in her heart that she had done her best, driven by love and fear. "You didn't ask for any of that. It's true," Eleanor acknowledged, her voice almost a whisper. "But you certainly enjoyed the benefits, didn't you? The private school, the cheerleading camps, the designer clothes, the expensive university, the carefree life you've lived since graduation, all paid for by my sacrifices." Eleanor straightened up, the folder of damning documents held securely in her hand. The time for discussion, for pleading, for any form of understanding, was over. "Well, Cassandra," she said, her voice now firm and resolute, "the magic show is over. The illusion is shattered." Cassandra's expression softened, a desperate flicker of her old manipulative charm. "Mom, look, maybe we both said some things we didn't mean. We can work this out. This is family." Her voice was sickly sweet, a stark contrast to the venom she'd just spewed. Eleanor gave her a look of genuine, chilling curiosity. "Family members don't usually plot to rob each other, declare each other mentally incompetent, and abandon each other in nursing homes, Cassandra. That's not family, that's a criminal enterprise." Cassandra recoiled, then immediately shifted tactics, attempting to deflect. "It was Leo's idea. He put me up to it, Mom. He told me you'd be so proud of me for being so clever." She stood up, reaching out a trembling hand. "I'll pay it back, I swear. Every last penny. We can forget about Leo's stupid plans and just go back to the way things were. Please, Mom." Eleanor shook her head slowly, a profound sadness mixing with her resolve. No, Cassandra, she stated, her voice steady. We can't go back to the way things were, because the way things were was destroying both of us. It was destroying my spirit, and it was destroying your soul. Eleanor turned and walked purposefully towards the front door. Her hand reached for the doorknob. Then she paused, turning back to face her daughter, who now stood utterly alone amidst the remnants of her ill-gotten gains. You have until tomorrow morning, Eleanor declared, her voice ringing with authority Cassandra had never heard before. Tomorrow morning to decide what kind of person you want to be. I'm going to spend this evening making some phone calls. To my lawyer, to my financial advisor, and to the police. As Cassandra's blood drained from her face, leaving her ghost white, Eleanor delivered the final devastating blow, her voice cold and unyielding. My name is Eleanor. You lost the right to call me Mom when you started planning my funeral. Eleanor spent the evening at a quiet downtown hotel, the anonymity a welcome balm after the day's emotional turmoil. Her phone calls were deliberate, methodical. The first was to her lawyer, Sarah Hayes, outlining the full scope of Cassandra's betrayal, the stolen funds, the attempted insurance fraud, and the chilling email. Sarah listened, her professional calm unwavering. Eleanor, what you've described is incredibly serious, Sarah confirmed, her voice grave. This isn't just a family squabble over money. This is elder abuse, financial exploitation, and conspiracy to commit fraud. These are felony charges, dear, and the email to Leo is a smoking gun. Eleanor listened, absorbing the legal weight of her daughter's actions. I understand the seriousness, Sarah, she replied, her voice steady. But before we involve the authorities fully, I want to give her one chance to do the right thing, to actually take responsibility. If she doesn't, then yes, we throw the book at her. But I want to offer her an opportunity to choose a different path, however slim that chance might be. Sarah, knowing Eleanor's character, agreed to prepare the necessary documentation for both outcomes. The next morning, Eleanor drove back to her house, the air thick with anticipation. As she pulled into the driveway, she noticed Leo's black sedan was conspicuously absent. The front yard, miraculously, had been cleared of most of her scattered belongings, though the broken china remained in a forlorn pile. Entering the house, she found Cassandra pacing the living room, a picture of distress. Her hair was disheveled, her eyes red and puffy, and genuine tears streaked her face. She looked genuinely distraught, a stark contrast to the calculating fury of the previous evening. Mom, thank God you're back, Cassandra rushed towards her, her voice laced with desperation. I've been thinking all night, and you're right about everything. I was so wrong, so incredibly wrong. I want to fix this. I want to make amends. She reached out, attempting to grasp Eleanor's hand, but Eleanor subtly pulled it back, maintaining a careful distance. Cassandra launched into a tearful monologue, a practiced performance honed over years of minor transgressions. I broke up with Leo. He was a bad influence. He put ideas in my head. You're my priority, Mom. Always. I promise I'll pay back every single penny, and I'll get a job, any job. I'll do whatever it takes. Eleanor walked past her, a neutral expression on her face, and went straight to the kitchen to make a pot of coffee. The aroma of brewing coffee filled the silence, a stark contrast to Cassandra's frantic apologies. Only when she had poured herself a mug, black and strong, did Eleanor turn back to her daughter. How, Cassandra? She asked, her voice calm, devoid of emotion. How exactly will you pay back $23,000? You have no job, no savings, no assets. Apart from the credit card debt you've accrued buying designer handbags, you haven't had a steady income in 3 years. Cassandra stumbled over her words, her carefully constructed apology faltering under the weight of practical reality. Well, I could work retail, or get my yoga instructor certification. I could teach classes, Mom. Really good money in that. Eleanor nodded slowly, taking a sip of coffee. Let's assume you get a retail job at minimum wage, working full-time. After taxes and basic living expenses, you might at best be able to put aside $100 a week towards that $23,000. That's a generous estimate, considering your current spending habits. She paused, then delivered the cold, hard truth. At that rate, Cassandra, it would take you approximately 38 years to pay me back. Cassandra's face fell. But, but I could live here while I pay you back. That would help, right? We're family. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. Live here, Cassandra. You've been living here rent-free for 3 years. That, combined with the other expenses you've burdened me with beyond basic utilities, amounts to approximately $48,000 in back rent and expenses. My lawyer has calculated the fair market value. Cassandra was aghast, her jaw dropping. You want me to pay rent? I'm your daughter. This is my home. The genuine tears had dried, replaced by a fresh wave of indignation. Yes, Cassandra, Eleanor replied, her voice firm. You are my daughter. You are also a grown woman, no longer my dependent child. And this is my home, a home you planned to steal from me. Eleanor set her coffee mug down. Her gaze pierced through Cassandra's wavering composure. So let's get to the real question, Cassandra. Are you actually sorry for what you did, or are you just sorry you got caught? Cassandra hesitated, her eyes flickering to the side, a moment of naked calculation in their depths. Then she adopted a contrite expression, carefully constructing her reply. I'm truly sorry, Mom, for everything. I realize how much I hurt you and how selfish I've been. I'm sorry I took advantage of your kindness. I want to change. I want to be a better person, a better daughter. It was the perfect answer, delivered with a practiced sincerity. Eleanor gave a slow nod. I believe you, Cassandra, she said, though her eyes held a spark of something less trusting. Which is why I've decided to give you a chance to prove your sincerity. A chance to start making things right. Cassandra's face brightened, a ray of hope breaking through her feigned despair. Oh, Mom, thank you. I won't let you down, I swear. Good, Eleanor continued, her voice unwavering. Because we're having a family meeting tonight at 7 p.m. I've invited Aunt Sarah, your aunt from Buffalo, to be here. She's flying in as we speak. My lawyer, Sarah Hayes, will also be joining us. And, Eleanor paused, watching as Cassandra's hopeful expression slowly bled away. I've also invited Detective Reynolds from the sheriff's office. Cassandra went very still, her voice barely a whisper. A detective? Why do we need a detective at a family meeting, Mom? Eleanor's gaze hardened, no trace of warmth left. Because what you did, sweetheart, isn't just a family disagreement. It's a crime. Elder abuse, financial exploitation, conspiracy to commit fraud. The detective is here to witness your confession, to ensure that the process of you taking responsibility for your actions is handled properly and legally. This is your chance to confess and agree to a path of restitution before the full force of the law becomes unavoidable. But that's not fair, Cassandra cried, a fresh wave of panic rising. You're just trying to scare me. Life isn't always fair, Cassandra, Eleanor replied, her voice devoid of sympathy mounting. And I'm not trying to scare you. I'm giving you an opportunity to finally take responsibility for the choices you've made before those choices lead you somewhere far worse. I want to see if there's any shred of integrity left in you. Eleanor walked to the front door, opening it wide to the morning air. And one more thing, Cassandra. You'll need to find somewhere else to live tonight. Effective immediately. She left Cassandra standing in the living room, a mask of dawning panic and frantic calculations slowly settling over her face. The day stretched long, filled with a quiet, grim determination. Eleanor spent hours meticulously preparing the living room, transforming it from a battleground into a formal, sterile space for the impending family meeting. She arranged chairs in a semicircle facing the couch where Cassandra would sit. On the coffee table, she placed neatly stacked copies of the damning documents, alongside a plate of store-bought cookies and a thermos of coffee, a small, ironic nod to domesticity. Every detail was carefully considered, every prop placed to serve its purpose in the drama to come. At precisely 6:30 p.m., Aunt Sarah arrived, her face etched with a grim, resolute expression. She embraced Eleanor tightly, her gaze lingering on the still damaged areas of the yard, a silent acknowledgement of the pain Eleanor had endured. 15 minutes later, Sarah Hayes, Eleanor's lawyer, arrived, her briefcase held firmly, her demeanor professional and unyielding. With her was Detective Reynolds, a kind-faced woman with piercing, intelligent eyes, who specialized in elder abuse cases for the sheriff's office. The air in the room grew heavy with unspoken tension, the quiet hum of polite conversation barely masking the gravity of the impending confrontation. The clock on the mantelpiece chimed 7 times. Exactly on cue, the soft pad of footsteps descended the stairs. Cassandra appeared at the top, dressed in a conservative black dress, her hair neatly pulled back, her face carefully composed to appear vulnerable and contrite. It was a performance Eleanor knew, but one she was prepared to see through. Cassandra's step faltered visibly, however, at the sight of the formal group assembled in the living room. Her aunt, a lawyer, and most damningly, a uniformed police detective. Detective Reynolds, her voice gentle yet firm, broke the silence. "Miss Patterson," she began, her gaze direct, "your mother tells me you have something you'd like to share with us." Cassandra's eyes darted from face to face, searching for an escape, a weakness. Her hand moved almost instinctively toward the front door. I don't know what she's talking about," she stammered, her voice thin. Eleanor spoke then, her voice calm and clear, cutting through Cassandra's attempt at evasion. "Cassandra, you have a choice. You can confess to these individuals now, take responsibility for your actions, and cooperate with the authorities. Or tomorrow morning you will be arrested and the weight of the law will come down on you. The choice is yours." The fight drained from Cassandra's eyes, replaced by a dawning terror. Slowly, stiffly, she walked to the couch and sat down, her back rigid with resentment. Detective Reynolds clicked on a small digital recorder. "For the record, this conversation is being recorded. Miss Patterson, your mother states you've been systematically withdrawing funds from her primary checking account without her knowledge or permission, using a fraudulently obtained power of attorney. She also states you conspired to have her declared mentally incompetent with the intention of taking her property and committing her to a care facility, all for your personal financial gain. Is this accurate?" Cassandra swallowed hard, her eyes fixed on Eleanor. I admit to taking the money," she mumbled, her voice barely audible. "But the power of attorney, it authorized me for her care and welfare." Aunt Sarah scoffed loudly from her seat. "Caring for her? By throwing her belongings onto the lawn and trying to steal her house?" Sarah Hayes interjected, her legal voice cutting through the tension. "Miss Patterson, the power of attorney you obtained was under false pretenses and used far beyond its legitimate scope. That constitutes fraud, and your mother has provided us with further evidence." Eleanor then produced the printed emails, Cassandra's damning correspondence with Leo, detailing their insidious plan to declare Eleanor incompetent, sell her house, and escape to Costa Rica with the proceeds. She read the most egregious lines aloud, each word a fresh cut. Detective Reynolds looked directly at Cassandra, her expression stern. "Miss Patterson, did you intend to defraud your mother, have her declared mentally incompetent, and commit her to a care facility against her will, all to financially benefit yourself and Mr. Leo?" Cassandra's face crumbled. She glanced at the detective, then at Eleanor, then at her aunt. Leo put me up to it," she whimpered, grasping at straws. "He said it was smart." "But did you agree to the plan, Miss Patterson?" Detective Reynolds pressed. "Did you participate in it?" A long, agonizing silence stretched. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, Cassandra admitted, "Yes,